First and foremost, welcome to my home. It's been a lot of years to get here and to be comfortable and happy and excited about the life that I've created. But it didn't happen overnight, and I'm still not there. I haven't arrived. But I'd love to share what it's like to be broke. And just for the record, broke didn't happen just once for me, and broken didn't happen just once for me. But I think oftentimes being broke and being broken is so lonely because we choose to do it alone because we're ashamed, because you fill in the blank. What are you that makes you do those things alone? And I think there's a balance, and I hope to teach you from my journey the balance in sharing with others but not burdening them, because it's not your friend's job or your family's job to pull you out of your brokenness or, quite frankly, out of your brokenness. And I will admit that there were times when my family didn't have to, but chose to pull me out of both. So I'll start at the place where when I first got married and I was 20, and quite frankly, not for everybody, but for me, too young to get married. Can I tell you this, that I literally got my hair done for my wedding day, and there were a lot of disastrous moments in that I'm not going to share, but I wrote the check to the hairstylist and I knew the check was going to bounce. I'm getting married, supposed to be financially prepared, and all I could think is, where am I going to get the money to put in my account to cover this check that I just wrote? And thank goodness, cheers to your hairstylist, she ended up not charging me for my hair that day. But again, I'm supposed to be entering the most adult decision I have made my entire life, and I'm broke. And I also played, there's a lot of B words here, broke, broken, burden, but I also played the blame game a lot in my brokenness. It oftentimes wasn't my fault. Anybody here, any of the viewers ever think, well, I deserve this nicety. I work hard. My spouse is the one that's not financially responsible. I work hard. I deserve. Do you want to hear the hard truth? You know what we deserve? What we can afford. We deserve what we can afford without raking up a credit card. We deserve what we can afford with some reserves in the bank. We deserve what we can afford without having to go to our parents to borrow money. I remember one of the first times I borrowed money, significant money from my parents. I was pregnant. I was working 3 jobs. And I remember my mom, I worked for a drug rehab, actually. I was a counselor. I worked at the bank. I was a counselor at a drug rehab. And then I was also doing the overnights with the kids that stayed there. And I remember my mom coming to visit, and she sits down on the bed next to me and she says, your dad and I know you're struggling with money. How about we help you out? We have a couple $1,000s. How about we help you out and pay some of your bills? And I just looked at her and said, that's not enough. I need more than that. We're in more trouble than that. My parents ended up getting an equity line on their house that they owned free and clear because, you see, they had lived very responsibly. We weren't wealthy by any means, but they had budgeted, managed, and lived very responsibly. So they got an equity line on their home to pay off all of our debt outside of our mortgage. And I think it's really important, again, to go back to what I said before. I am glad and I am blessed that I had a loving family that would help. And by the way, I paid back every dime of the money that I've ever borrowed from my parents. But how wrong of me to put myself in a situation, married, an adult, pregnant with my first child, where I needed my parents to bail me out and where I needed them to figure out that I needed bailing out. Again, another B word, right? Bailing out, blame, burden, broken, all the things that I was experiencing while getting ready to deliver my first child. And thank goodness I did choose a path where I worked for a great company, a bank at the time. I had benefits. I had all those things covered. But there were so many things I didn't have covered because I wasn't prepared. So we were broke. So again, we're talking about being broke, and it would be remiss of me, and it's easy now. I can see already the look in the eyes of the people watching, listening, right, to this podcast, thinking, well, she just doesn't understand, or easy for her, look at where her life is now. But I think one of the beauties, another B word, one of the beauties of age and days on this earth is that I get to look back and I get to share the flaws that were in me. And again, part of it was ownership. I did not look in the mirror. We didn't have a solid marriage. We ended up divorced. Like, that's part of my story too. It's part of the burden that I carry in, again, you heard me when I started talking today. I'm 20 years old, too young to get married, literally don't have 2 dimes to rub together, don't have the money to pay the hairdresser, and I'm getting married. So we started off way on the wrong foot. And my husband at the time had his own business, kind of went through few different job changes. And in my mind, not to be offensive, in my young mind, it was his fault and I was the responsible one. I mean, I dressed in a suit every day. I worked at the bank. That made me responsible, right? But it really didn't make me personally fiduciarily responsible. And I remember that day, the things we learned being at the bank, knowing we weren't making our car payment, and having the financer of our car calling me saying, "Where is your car today?" And although I had never been down this journey, I was smart enough to know they wanted to know where my car was parked because they wanted to come take it because we weren't paying our payments. Good, bad, right, wrong. I said, my husband had my car today and he's off site. I'm not sure where he is. But again, my parents helped me get the car payment caught up. I remember working at the bank, and I've always been rapidly successful because of work ethic and I'd say a level of intelligence and all the things that I pride myself on. So I was successful at the bank. I started as a teller, worked my way up at a very young age, was managing a department. And I remember getting called into human resources because they were taking my checking account privileges away because we had overdrawn my checking account so many times. And again, in my mind, it was my husband's fault, not mine. But it wasn't. It was mine. We were in this together. And I remember having to go up to the teller when it was payday and do a cash withdrawal and knowing that they all knew why I was doing that. So here I am in a responsible position, a responsible person. And by the way, my mom and my Nana, they bought me my work clothes, which I would suggest is not an abuse of parenting and not taking advantage of them. I loved that my mom and Nana really cared about how I looked for work every day. So I played the part. I did the role. So much of it was who I really was. But I fought this silent battle. And again, I would suggest to anybody watching, the battle was not only the financial issues we were having, but it was the battle inside myself that I didn't own it. And again, ladies, gentlemen, this idea that when you're broke, you deserve to go buy something for yourself. Again, leave this podcast today knowing we deserve what we can afford with money left in the bank. That's what we deserve. Took me a long time to get there. We could talk today about cars and how so many people been there, done that, decide what kind of car I can afford by what kind of monthly payment I can afford. How about, and I've taught my children this, what kind of car you can afford by how quickly you can pay it off. And how about playing the how long can we drive this car paid off game? Or let's always have one paid off car in our marriage and one financed car. So again, so many lessons. And I'll share with you too, I remember pulling up the chair cushions, the couch cushions to find change to put gas in the car. And thank goodness back then, a couple bucks worth of change could get you somewhere in your car, right? Nowadays, not so much. So I just like to say out loud, I feel like I've been around the broke block a time or two. And I've been down by the brokenness block a time or two. And oftentimes there was a relationship between the two conversations. And then we have the journey in 08, 09, 10. The market was amazing, right? And then not so much. My income was cut significantly. I had 3 children in private school, 1 in college. At the time, my husband wasn't working. And I had the role that I'm in now. So to put on that face, to go to work every day as a successful businesswoman, but knowing that I had $20 in my wallet and how was that going to get me through whatever I needed to get through. So those were trying times. And I think I did those trying times better than I did the first set. And we kept our kids in private school. We kept our daughter in college. And we were able to do a little robbing of Peter to pay Paul. But I would consider that story a success. But, there's another B word, but I learned to save more money, to spend less, to be debt-free. I do have a mortgage, and I have opinions about that maybe other financial people don't have, but I'm comfortable, very comfortable having a mortgage. But I learned to save, and by the way, anybody that knows me, I love to spend. But I learned to budget my love for spending. I learned to budget my love for taking my children on crazy vacations. I learned to budget. I want to pay for each one of my grandchildren's college education or whatever their choices are when they turn 18 with the support of their parents. I learned to budget for the shoes I'm wearing today that you all can't see because they're under the table. So budgeting all the things that I love, because my mom and my Nana taught me very well how to spend and how to enjoy spending. So I do believe that I've found a way to have a lot of the things that make me who I am. But I also love that song, even though we ain't got money, I'm still in love with you, honey. Can't remember the name of that song, but there's the tune. Not the tune, but there are the words. And I think, again, there's an opportunity to love deeply, to be engaged completely with people and not make money the primary focus. But when you've been without money, and I grew up, by the way, without money. My mom was a single mom. We moved from Pennsylvania to Florida, to Venice, Florida specifically. And we lived on the corner in a rental, no car. And we lived within walking distance of my grandparents, walking distance within my mom's work, and walking distance within our school because we didn't have a car. You know, we ate all those things like chicken pot pie and Spam and bologna, fried bologna, all of which I choose not to eat now just because, and I never understand, by the way, people that order pot pie at a restaurant, like that makes zero sense to me, because for me, they were delightful times and there were joy in the moments. But we grew up wanting more than we had, but learning how to love. I remember very specifically taking the little puppy dog to the emergency room where my mom worked. We had the whole entire, every customer, I guess you'd call them, in the emergency room, everybody there saying, please, Mom, let them get the dog. So we have some very, very fond memories of the clothesline in the backyard where we built tents over it. We had a small home that we rented, and my brother's room, by the way, was the dining room. And I shared with my mom, and my sisters shared a room with each other. My mom worked nights. A lot of stories about growing up without, but growing up with. And I'll say that too. And those of you that heard my Mother's Day conversation, we lacked. We have alcoholism in our family. We have dysfunction in our family. And that's where the brokenness comes in. So you're broke, you're broken, you're all those things. But I believe with all my heart, if you're honest and transparent with the right people, and again, don't burden your friends where every time they see you, you're talking about your brokenness, because their wagon's not big enough for your brokenness and theirs. But share with the idea of change and ownership. Isn't it interesting that some of you could be watching, listening, thinking, wow, like Susan had all these struggles and she just pretended like they didn't exist. No, they existed. But I also think there's the opportunity to be your authentic self while leaving your problems at the door. Everybody at work didn't need to know we were broke. Again, the tellers knew, right? The HR person knew, but everybody at my work did not know. And does that mean I'm fake? Does that mean I was fake? Or did that mean I authentically knew always that I had a job to do at work and leaving my problems at the door was the right thing? And then honestly, try this, right? Try this at home. When you act authentically in the moment, in the environment, you will feel better. I was at Jesse's baby shower this weekend, and Jesse's sister-in-law said, as she gave parenting advice, Teach your children to match the vibe in the room. So if you go to Chuck E. Cheese, tell your children, your child, match the vibe when we go in here. If you go to Barnes and Noble, the bookstore, match the vibe. And I think as I look back, and thank you, Corey, for that tip, and also your sense of humor and your love and laughter. But I think about that. I think that's what I did. I matched the vibe. The vibe was, I'm here to work. I'm a professional. And just because I have a long list of struggles doesn't mean that I can't be the authentic professional. Doesn't mean that I can't pour in and achieve greatness on a daily basis for my clients at the time and the people that worked for me and with me. So pour in to wherever you are, whatever you're supposed to be doing. And then it's almost like, wow, what happened to the bad feeling I felt when I woke up this morning? And then learn how to back up and wake up feeling good. Because even when you're broke, even when you're broken, there's still so much promise in your life, because there definitely was in mine. I also have another tip for you, and you might not like this one either. When and if you are going to ask people for help, you need to tell those people the whole story. When my mom sat down on that bed and offered me help, I could have very comfortably taken a couple $1,000s and band-aided our problem. But instead, I leveled with her and told her the whole truth. Don't you dare take help from people that you're not willing to tell them the whole truth. Because honestly, telling my mom the whole truth meant that my husband and I didn't go to the movies. My husband and I didn't go out to dinner. I didn't buy a new outfit. Thank goodness she still bought me new outfits. I didn't do those things because I knew she was watching, and I knew she had a right to watch. And that's what I also want to say, and I can give a list of stories to match this conversation. When you screw up your life in small ways or large ways, and people talk about it or they criticize you, you did that. So my family also had the right to tell me what they thought about my misspending, my overindulgence, the fact that I got pregnant. By the way, for the most part, we all know how you get pregnant, right? I had no business getting pregnant. And I think, actually, I know I came home with a story. We just don't know how this happened. We knew exactly how that happened. I love all 4 of my kids tremendously. But no probably about it wasn't the best time to plan a family. And again, people will say, no regrets, no regrets, no regrets. Our journey is our journey. And again, as I said before I even started this podcast, being a mother and a grandmother are the best things in my life. But I was irresponsible. So tell the whole truth to the people that you ask to help you. So I think it's also really important not to compare yourself with others. It's your journey, right? And there could be, again, all these conversations. This is what's so exciting about being here today on this podcast, is we could just roll down so many different lanes and so many different roads. So comparing yourself, whether you compare yourself and think you deserve what so-and-so has, whether you compare yourself and think there's something wrong with you and therefore that's why you don't have what so-and-so has, regardless of what end of the comparing stick you land on, just compare yourself to you. And also be aware of what others are doing and achieving, because they might give you some insight on how you could be and what path you need to take. And sometimes people give you an insight on how you don't want to be. So pay attention. Have, as I always say to my children and to my team, have a full court view and awareness of what's going on around you. But at the end of the day, in the beginning of the day, and quite frankly, throughout the day, take a look in your own mirror and compare yourself against who you were a minute before and who you're going to be a minute after. There's the beauty. So I'm going to go right back to the beginning, and I'm going to say this. Sometimes being broke and broken is a very lonely world. And I would suggest part of it needs to be, right, because we have all this that we have to work out inside of us. Share with the right people and not everybody. Not everybody should know your story. Share with the right people. Tell the entire truth. Look in the mirror, and let's get beyond broken. And if it happens again, a second time, you'll get better at it, and you'll get better at it. And here's to not being broke again, not being so broken again that it's hard to repair, and just fixing us. I feel like I said so much. So now I'm going to challenge you. Which tips, and there were a lot of them, and I'm really trusting that you'll be able to find them throughout this entire podcast. Which tips will benefit you? And hold up, which tips are you willing to say out loud to whomever, could be me, could be someone else, that you're going to adopt and take on in your own personal life? This is your call to action.